what's up everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast, where on this episode, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Age of Disclosure documentary. Yes, I purchased and sat through every minute of it, which I have some thoughts I definitely want to share with you guys, and I want to hear back from you as well, to hear what you guys think. And then we're going to talk about what does President Trump know about the UAP, UFO, alien situation, and was the actual date of presidential disclosure just released to the public without them knowing yet? I think there's a good chance of that. And I'm going to tell you what the date is. I'm going to tell you why I think I know it's coming. But before we do that, as always, if you are not a subscriber to this channel, please click on the subscribe button and also click on the notifications tab so you get a new message every time I release a new episode. And last but not least, if you have not visited our Patreon page yet, please do so. As you guys know, because I discuss the paranormal and conspiracy theories and things of that nature, YouTube loves to demonetize my videos. So if you are able to support as a patron, that would be awesome. Our Patreon link is in the description below, where we update and release new Patreon-only content. Now we're doing it twice a week. So there's a lot of stuff coming out there right now about A House in the Harbinger Kingdom, still photos, videos, new music, and there's going to be a pretty cool Patreon-only announcement that's made next week as well. So if you can, once again, the Patreon link is in the description box below. Now let's get into this Age of Disclosure documentary. Let me start out with the pros, because I always get accused of, being negative in my film reviews, which I think that's just a byproduct of being a filmmaker. Trust me, when I review my own films, I only see the places that I could have done better. I think it's just a habit. When you do something, you just watch things a little bit differently than others do. It'd be like if you're a football player, if you played football for the NFL and you watched a football game on TV, you would not enjoy it the same way that a fan does. You would just see different aspects of it, and you'd question those aspects a little more. It's just kind of a byproduct of being a filmmaker. But having said that, I did my best to truly watch this as somebody who is not only a filmmaker, but somebody who hasn't been thrust down the rabbit hole of the UFO world, which, trust me, I never thought that is where I would end up when I began working on the Sir No Face case. And when I met Craig, which in the very near future I will have an update from Craig as well. So sit tight for that. The Age of Disclosure. First off, look, it's put together very well. And when I say very well, I mean it's pro. The director of it, he's a producer that works with Steven Spielberg. He's an old school Hollywood guy that really does great work. And when you watch the film, it's very easy to understand. It definitely follows, a flow and a format where, the average person who knows nothing about this world could quickly find it to be something interesting. On the front end, it's just really kind of heavy, on the idea that there's no chance mathematically and scientifically that we're alone in the universe. And it slowly starts to introduce a lot of military people that are involved that basically tell their stories of like secret programs to, capture spacecraft and back engineer them. Like, we've seen a lot of this stuff. But they introduce people like Jay Stratton. He was the former Defense Intelligence Agency official. Hal Puthoff, which you've seen before. He's a physicist and former CIA contractor. The big name, Marco Rubio, which is obviously the current U.S. Secretary of State and a former senator. But there's a lot of the same faces we've seen too. David Fravor, Ryan Graves, and Luis Elizondo. That is a big name, as the film kind of tells his story. Now, there's a reason for that, which we'll get into that in a second as well. So, as a plus, this really honestly feels like, it was made by a filmmaker that just had complete access to anybody they wanted to speak to within the government. And when you hear them all together, it's very, very compelling. And one might argue too compelling, which I'll get to that as well. But yeah, if you didn't really know anything about this, you had never seen anything on the topic, you would go, man, there's no way that any of this couldn't be true. We are definitely in league with aliens. They've been visiting here forever. There's an 80-year stockpile of incredible footage of, UFO crashes, us visiting with aliens, us recovering bodies. It all seems to be incredibly compelling if you just listen to the stories of all of these people. That's where my positives end on this film. When it comes to negative, first and foremost, I don't think this film should be called a documentary, because documentaries are supposed to present events as they occurred, and you, the viewer, you are left to decide what you think. Now, I do know that no matter how hard a filmmaker tries, there's always going to be some kind of slant or some kind of bias, because as human beings, it's impossible that we don't carry, a bias of some kind. But there's a difference between, I did my best to present the events as they occurred down the middle versus I prepared a propaganda piece. And this thing feels like a propaganda piece. There's so many military people, and it feels like it was prepared by the Department of Defense to kind of tee up the president to have his day. His big day to come forward and say, ladies and gentlemen of the world, we are not alone. And we haven't had that yet. And that's a big thing. And I don't think we're going to ever have what people consider true disclosure until that day comes, right? And I think we can all agree with that. That's going to be the day when there's enough evidence in the barrel, hard physical evidence, that the president could walk out and say, ladies and gentlemen of the world, we are not alone. Here is the evidence. And we see a craft, or we see a body, and it's confirmed that that's real. But this feels like, if the president were going to do that, all the stuff that's been going down since the New York Times article in 2019, over the last 6 years, everything that's slowly been dripping out, and we can all agree this has been like, a slow feeding to the public. It's like breadcrumbs, right? This feels like the propaganda piece that brings it all together. So we know what happened since the very beginning. So if you weren't paying attention, when the first New York Times article came out, up until now, this brings it all together and it spoon feeds it to you. And it does it by telling you basically the story of Lou Elizondo, which this is a massive problem with this quote documentary. For one, Lou has been proven to be a complete hoaxer on multiple occasions, starting with the irrigation circles, in the fields that he said were UFOs, which they weren't. And the biggest one, the one that everybody should have, at that moment, should have said, we are never listening to this guy again, is when he presented that photo from Romania and said, this is a mothership UFO that was seen coming out of the clouds, and there are Romanian pilots that circled it, saw it, flew right by it, and he had spoken to them, he said. He said that he had spoken directly to those pilots, and he confirmed that this was a massive UFO mothership. And No, it wasn't. It was the reflection of a chandelier in a window, which was incredibly obvious that's what it was. This guy also was carting around photos of alien bodies that were like so fake, and they were proven fake. So he's been, proven to be a complete hoaxer on multiple occasions, and it's a well-known fact that he worked for a government in disinformation, and he also worked for the disinformation department of SpaceX. So when the premise of the film is his story, and it all goes back to that same group of people, the Eric Davis, the Lukatsky, the Hal Puthoff, the whole Skywalker Ranch crew with ATIP and OSAP, Corbell, Knapp, all those absolute bullshitters. Those are the people behind this documentary, which I just don't know. At that point, I just can't take it seriously because I know Lou Elizondo is an executive producer of this. He's an executive producer of it. So the guy who we know is a proven liar, and we know it was his job to lie, is the guiding force behind this film. And of course, as Skyfall predicted, the entire film is a fear-mongering film about, oh my God, this is so dangerous. We don't know where these things came from. We know for a fact that they're NHI, which is non-human intelligence. We know that these objects were created by NHI, and we don't know what they are going to do. And there's going to be a big attack, or we're at risk of a big attack by these guys. And all this shit that basically, is geared towards making all of us scared. To put fear in all of us that if there was a species that was more intelligent than us, that our biggest fear should be that they'll want to kill us and wipe us out. And our second biggest fear, of course, should be, what if the Russians get it first? What if China gets it first? What if they back engineer and control these, aircraft before we do? Now, what's really weird about that is it's kind of they need to pick the side of the fence they want to be on. Because on one hand, they're saying that there are back engineered craft. Some of them are real that we're seeing. Some UFOs that we're seeing are real ones that were created by non-human intelligence. But then some of them are ours. And then they turn around and say, well, there's a race. There's a race for this technology. And, we got to get there first, because if the Russians do, or if China does, that spells, bad news for everybody. Well, which is it? We've either back engineered craft that can defy the laws of physics, or we're in a race to do so. You know what I'm saying? It's a confusing narrative because they're warning of both. So overall, look, when it comes to this film, I really do think that this is the Department of Defense tee-up documentary, basically to tee up the president to be able to come forward. And the reason I say that is Marco Rubio in this film says as much. He says that a massive day of disclosure is coming. Now, as a senator, if he says that, it could be his opinion. But as a Secretary of State, that's a big statement to say that a massive day of disclosure is, in fact, coming. And that's what this feels like. And if you look at the way this was set up with the press, this film was whispered about forever, right? And then it did a South by Southwest screening, and then it was oh my God, the CIA and the government pulled it back because it just might have too much in it. And you find out that the same version that was released at South by Southwest was the final version. It was just hype to get people excited to think, oh my God, maybe there's too much in there. They're just sharing too much. which I recognized that right away as a marketing ploy, which was a smart one because it did what they wanted to do. Everybody was whispering about this documentary. But here's the trick to this documentary. Once again, when it's all said and done, it's just stories. There is no, and I mean zero additional hard proof of anything. There's no new footage. There's no physical evidence presented. There's no photos presented. There's nothing presented beyond stories. That's it. The same as all the way back to 2019. You know, all these guys, whether it's Elizondo, Corbell, Knapp, they love to talk about how, you know, these are historic times and so much has changed in the world of disclosure. Nothing's changed, man. Nothing's changed. There's no footage that everyone can agree upon. And when I realized that this was all propaganda, it was the first time that I realized that is when nobody was talking about the Aguadilla footage, which is incredible footage that I believe is totally real. And that no one, in this circle had came to me or gone to Craig to say, let us see the raw footage of Sir No Face. Which I would have said, great, it's in the film. That's the raw footage. Because to this day, nobody has provided an answer for what is in Sir No Face. Sir No Face is some sort of entity. It is some sort of entity, and I agree with people that it does appear to be the size and shape of a gray alien. Now, is it is that what it is? Or is it, as Dr. Stephen Greer says, some biological creation? I don't know. But the facts behind that case are astonishing, and that evidence stands today. We know for a fact that for 4.5 hours, whatever Sir No Face was, it was not seen entering or leaving the house. It did not make a sound. It was about waist high, the size of it. We know for a fact who was on the island. We know at 7 o'clock the island shut down. There's just simply no explanation for what occurred out there, especially with the lights, with all the stuff that happened with Sir No Face. And that's incredible footage. But there's a reason why the DoD, wants to focus on these 3 pieces of footage that they released. And even later with the footage of the jellyfish, UAP. These are all pieces of footage that are military footage. And the reason they like to release military footage is because they can say, oh, you don't understand what's on here. This is military footage. So if you were a pilot, or if you were a gunner, or if you were, then you'd understand it. Then you'd know how to, read this. And I'm sitting here going, no, listen, I'm not a pilot, but I could look on this footage here right now, whether it be the Go Fast or the gimbal, or the Tic Tac. That footage does not show the laws of physics being broken. It does not show that. It doesn't show anything going on. I mean, the Go Fast footage, whatever that is, which is likely either a drone. Some people say it's a bird. I don't think it's a bird. I think it's a drone. But it's not even going fast. And it's called the Go Fast footage. They chose the pieces they wanted to release carefully. And they chose those pieces because they had a lot of extra information on them that they could bring pilots on and say, oh, this is why, this is crazy and this is what this means. And it's stuff that people just don't follow. People watch with their eyes. Even the piece of footage that they just released at the last hearing, which they're like, look at this Hellfire missile hits it and it blows into pieces. And the pieces just keep flying together. And it's like, no, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. It was a balloon. The missile went straight through it because of parallax. Because the camera keeps moving. It makes it look like the pieces that were blown up keep moving. When you're just looking at a balloon that's been blown apart that's barreling towards the ground. But all of these pieces that they released have this like instant wow factor if you don't know what you're looking at. The jellyfish looks like some creepy jellyfish thing flying through the air. When you look into it and you realize what was going on at that time, you quickly determine that it's a balloon. It's actually a collection of Ramadan balloons. So anyways, there's a lot. I can go on there forever. But my point being, in the age of discovery, the age of disclosure documentary, there's absolutely zero proof, evidence of anything at all that any of these people are talking about. Again, it's a long list. Like I said, Jay Stratton, Lou Elizondo, Hal Puthoff, Mark Rubio, Kirsten Gillibrand, Mike Rounds, James Clapper, Andre Carlson, David Fravor, Ryan Graves, and the list goes on and on and on. And there's not one hard piece of evidence that these guys have for anything. But yet they're saying Marco Rubio, which is I think the one voice we should listen to the most, says that a date is coming. So that begs the question, what does President Trump know? What does he know about UFOs, UAP, aliens, extraterrestrials, the potential of life in the universe? If you watch his interview with Joe Rogan, a couple things become apparent. One, he doesn't know hardly anything about this whole world. He's not been down the rabbit hole. But Trump's smart. He knows people are interested. But I don't get the impression that Trump thinks that it's as big of a deal with people as it is. I don't think that he thinks it is. I think he likes kind of teasing that he's met with some people. And he said as much. He said, we've met with pilots and they say there's things they can't explain, that are flying around out there. And he's, teased information about Roswell before. But I don't think Trump feels that it would be the big deal that everybody else believes that it will be. But having said that, I think things have kind of come full circle. And I think the film, like I said, teed him up to release this information when he wants to. When he wants to come forward and give the, ladies and gentlemen of the world, we're not alone speech. And I get the impression that there's something they have that they can show to actually prove that when they want to. Now, that might be part of a ship. Maybe it is an alien body. Who knows? But it's certainly not in the documentary. But I think it's been teed up. And I also think that Trump is going to need to do that to win favor. I think right now, Donald Trump is in a bad situation. Things are not going well. They are not going well with his support. They are not going well with people's, with the inflation, with the economy. And this isn't a political conversation. It's just, factually speaking, things are not going well for Trump. And he's going to need to curry a lot of favor with the public if he has a chance of keeping the House. And I'm bringing all this up because there was a major film announcement that was just made. And it was by Steven Spielberg. And he has a film coming out about disclosure called Disclosure Day. And it's coming out on June 12th of 2026. Next summer, June 12th, 2026, which will be right before the midterm elections. Right before. Now, like I said, who is the producer of The Age of Disclosure? It's Spielberg's producer. So that film comes out, the documentary. It tees up Rubio saying, massive disclosure is coming. So it sets it up for Trump. And then the name of Steven Spielberg's film is literally called Disclosure Day. And that's on June 12th. You might have just heard Chapo jump down. He was sitting next to me this whole time. So again, Spielberg released these big, massive promotional signs all over the country saying, Disclosure Day on June 12th. Do I think that is the day that Trump will make that announcement? Which, again, remember, Skyfall also predicted that Trump will be the one to make the historic announcement. I have a tendency to actually lean towards yes. And a lot of it has to do with Trump, too, just because I know he likes spectacle and he likes Hollywood, and it's a prime opportunity to get the opportunity to really grab the world's attention and to do something that the public, by and large, believes should happen. It's a way for him to curry favor with everybody across the board. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, everybody agrees we want the truth. And if there is something real like alien bodies or a spaceship or a UFO, we want to see that. That's powerful. That maybe doesn't change our daily life, but, religiously, morally, ethically, it changes a lot, And it's just exciting. It's really exciting. So Disclosure Day, June 12th, 2026. If he's not going to make the announcement on that day, it's one hell of a marketing plan. But I think that Trump is going to do everything he can to make sure he doesn't lose that house, because if he loses it, he's got a world of shit coming his way. So I think if there's ever a time for him to roll out everything that he has to try to curry favor with the public, that's going to be the time. Trump loves spectacle, so there's going to be all kinds of promotion coming out calling that Disclosure Day. How big of a deal would it be if he came out and said, on June 12th, 2026, we will have a major announcement involving life throughout the universe? I mean, that would be massive. Globally, it would be a massive announcement that everybody would watch. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you've seen the film, if you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about it. Do you think Trump knows what is going on? Do you think he really cares? Do you think he's a believer in it? And do you think that there's some kind of setup for this Disclosure Day film that Spielberg's releasing? Now remember, Spielberg's also a massive fan of this stuff. I have spoke about this stuff with him personally, and his interest in it is extremely real. So I'm excited to see his film as well, too. So anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.